Time to build a bridge. Hi, I'm Anne-Margaret with this week's Sacred Sunday message to raise the vibration of your body, mind, and spirit. Thanks for joining me today. So many times, accountability can really feel like an attack. Like if we're not ready to really own how our feelings, how our actions, how what we say and what we think has on others or on our own lives, it can really feel like an attack. It can feel like a personal attack. But this is what holds the power for us to create if we just know how the game works, the game of life, relationships, etc. So that we're not like standing on our own side of things with our arms crossed, kind of like tapping our foot, waiting for the other person to come to us, or waiting for that success to come to us, but that we shift where we are. We shift how we're thinking, how we're being, and how we're moving through the world to create a bridge to what we desire, whom we desire to connect with, the people in our lives who really do matter. Does it take two? Yes, it does, absolutely. But you'll find that we mostly forfeit so much of our power that we really could be accessing fully and building at least as much of the bridge as we can if they're willing to step in with us. All right. So thanks for joining me for today's Sacred Sunday. Let's get a little deeper here. So we will never, unless we really step into that embodiment of empowerment with accountability, we'll never get to where we desire. Never. If you think about some sort of goal you have in your life with your partner, your spouse, your kids, anything like that, something in your life that really means so much to you, and what you want to do in order to get there. Think about that. Maybe it's something, maybe you want to lose weight, maybe you want to get a new career going or write a book. There is a bridge from where you are to where you want to be that can only be crossed with accountability. So my dad's an engineer. He used to help build suspension bridges, and I was always so fascinated because whenever we cross one of these incredible man-made structures, isn't it amazing to look up and see these beautiful cables and all of the structure and wonder as it crosses this river or this water, how is it possible? How is that possible to dig deeply into the foundation to provide those beams to support, how it levitates on top of the water way above just so things can pass underneath? And how these huge arches and what the engineering, how it actually all works together so that it can hold weight. I mean, I think it's the most trafficked bridge in the world is the George Washington Bridge in New York City that connects New York City to New Jersey. And I think it's like over 100 million vehicles, I think it's like 102 million vehicles cross that suspension bridge every year. Now, we look in nature, we look at what we create, and, bridges aren't necessarily man-made, obviously, or not, we can put, some stones down, or stones might be naturally laid across a creek where we can kind of maneuver, but we can also create them ourselves. And really those stone bridges were the very first bridges that existed. And then we kind of threw the tree over the water or over the big chasm. So if we think in our lives, like, why are we building the bridge? There's something between us, where we are, where we want to be. And what's between it is an uncrossable area of land, of water, of maybe unknown human dynamics. So when we look at bridges and we look at I use the image today from Budapest, the famous chain bridge there that connects Buda, where the Buda castle is, to Pest, and that created Budapest, having this beautiful city linked by this beautiful bridge over the river there. It's incredible. And it was even, and sometimes the bridges that we build get destroyed, don't they? With maybe the trust bridge that we create with our partner gets annihilated. Well, this is what happened to the chain bridge in World War II. It got completely annihilated by the Germans. And in just 4 years, it was able to be rebuilt again. So depending on what our commitment is, like how committed are we to building these bridges and to keeping them going? So, and that's really the crucial part too. I mean, when I studied about bridge building a little bit, and I haven't studied much, but I understand that there is a pre-construction, a construction, and then a post-construction aspect of the building. Now, when we think about that with our lives, like how do we parallel it? When we want to build something, we got to plan for it. We got to lay the architecture, we got to lay the architectural plans, we got to lay the engineering facets and take in consideration the soil and whatever else. It's not my area of expertise, obviously, but we need to plan for it. And then it's building. It's the building that's the practice that takes a long, long time, where we need to really make sure everything that we do is in accordance with those initial plans. We keep going back. We check the plans every day, many times a day. So think about in your own life, when you want something, when you want to be somewhere you're not, or have a relationship with somebody go a little bit deeper, or let bygones be bygones. You know what they say, remember water passing under the bridge? You guys know that saying, right? So water passing under the bridge, really is indicative of letting the past be in the past. Letting that water pass under the bridge and let the flow of life still happen. So the bridge doesn't stop the flow of the water. The bridge does not stop the flow of what happens in life and the pain that comes and disappointment and the glorification of the highs and then the devastating blows of the lows. Those are always going to happen in our lives. That we cannot avoid. Good luck if you're trying to do that, because then it's kind of like living in La La Land, which a lot of us do live in. It's not realizing the way that we were designed, the way that life is, the way that the human dynamics are. So how do we create something that's lasting, but also grounded in reality so it has some stability? So in addition to that pre-constructive phase where they do the planning and then the actual construction phase, what's next is the post-constructive phase where you look back and you keep checking in, you keep looking and you make sure is this still steady? Is this still working? And going back and making sure that the bridge is still sound, that it can still bear the weight that it could before. So these are aspects of our lives too. When we build these bridges, maybe it's a marriage, maybe it's your marriage, right? And maybe it's a friendship. These bridges that we naturally sometimes have with one another, most oftentimes, if not always, need reinforcement. Going back to the drawing board and saying, you know what, we need to reinforce this a little bit more here or there to be responsible, to take care of those who cross over, right? Ourselves and others, or whatever we're building in this world. So when I was thinking about this too, when we're building, you have to think about when we're building in our lives, the most powerful creator in our lives is that mindset, is how we are seeing the world. And we have this really strange dichotomy in being human, which is the dichotomy of being a human, being a living, breathing, very human, makes mistakes, human, right? Walking around. And then we also have this truly divine nature that we can access, where we can create consciously, where we can assess things and consider them in order to create a reality that's different from what we are currently experiencing. That's phenomenal. So how do we make sense and how do we reconcile that we've got that human part and we've got that divine part? And what does this have to do with bridge building? So there is a tension within us in being human between these two parts of us, between the part of us who subscribes to the mind, who allows the mind to rule things and to resist and to divide and to analyze. And yes, the mind is so critical in our creation ability. And yet, if it is master over the heart, then we are going to end up in a very ego-centered existence where we will never find peace. We will never be happy. So when we think about the mind versus the heart, the mind, having this tension being human and being divine, having that aspect of God within us to create with our free will, to bring to this life our unique gift to the world. How do we do that in a way that's not egoic, which doesn't push people down, which doesn't create more divisiveness in the world? And we can answer this by asking ourselves, well, how are we identifying? Are we identifying with the mind, with the ego, with the things that separate us? Are we committed to standing on our shore, crossing our arms, and just saying, no, I'm going to wait for you to come to me? Are we too proud? Are we too stubborn? Are we not accessing that beautiful divine love within us, that we can truly create those bridges in our lives that are long lasting, so that we may have the peace in our hearts that we desire? We can have the relationships in our lives that we so want, we so thrive upon. So let's look with the issues of the mind. So the mind really, if we are just going with the mind, and we're seeing a lot of mind-driven behavior nowadays, aren't we? Like, I'm right, you're wrong, here's the evidence, here's why, and you suck. I mean, it's the most divisive behavior, but it is so rampant right now. So the issue of the mind is the mind doesn't want to accept it and immediately rejects what it's given. It doesn't, it's not a natural inclination for the mind to say, oh yes, please, I'll take discordance, I'll take something that is not a desirable circumstance in my life. The mind immediately rejects it and tries to figure out how to weasel its way out of this uncomfortability. It's kind of like a willful child, like a child crossing their arms and saying, I don't wanna. No, this is not what I want. I'm not gonna do it. You can't make me. We still have those tantrums as adults, as we all know, right? Maybe not all of us know that, but we still have those tantrums. But what's incredible about our Creator, the ability, that divine will that we are granted and we are given, is that we have the ability to receive circumstance or receive undesirable, selfish, or mean, or a malevolent, downright malevolent behavior from others. And we get to create who we're going to be in the face of those circumstances, or that treatment, or that rejection, or whatever it is, or the smearing of our reputation. We get to choose that. It's incredible. And we can't do that if we simply reside in the mind, because the mind will try to dominate that other person. The mind will try and fix something or run from something and not being in that uncomfortable place. So the mind is what is responsible for closing our heart, from closing our heart to ourselves and doing what we need to do in order to take care of ourselves. The mind will say, will justify, it'll resign, it'll get distracted by something else. It will run from being present to the impact on the heart. The physical heart, of course, yes, but also the center that we come from, that is our center of love. It is our access to freedom, to true happiness, to true peace. That resides in the heart. It doesn't reside in the mind unless it's being funneled by the heart. If the mind is the master, like the ego, we will be in a world of misery, of our own creation, okay? And we create also not just by what we do, say, or think, but also what we allow, what we don't say, what we don't do, and what we don't cultivate in our minds as conscious thought. So we do not want to take our mind's perspective, our mind's input. We don't want to take that as our own and think that that's who we are. Are we identifying with our mind, or are we identifying with our heart, with our divine soul's capability to create consciously? How are we identifying? How are you identifying? It's important to ask these questions, because if we are able to not take our mind, the thought, and all of the reality that the mind has as our identity, then we will be able to access that peace, that beautiful, loving aspect to this human journey, this human reality. Because what troubles us the most in life, you guys? It's the difficult emotions, right? It's the difficult things that arise. And how do emotions arise? They come from our perception, how we're perceiving life, our reality, our belief system. And that comes from the thoughts that we think over and over and over again in our minds. That's how they are created, right? So if we remember that emotions come with how we're perceiving life, we can be very mindful and make sure that those thoughts are rooted in love, are rooted in our hearts, okay? And this is how we're designed. I mean, we cannot live in this la-la land and pretend that someday it's all going to be perfect, that someday we're going to get it figured out, and then we're never going to have a painful experience or a disappointment again. You are setting yourself up for disappointment if you are coming from that place. You know that, right? So once you accept the dynamics, the rules of this game of being human, and recognize, pain is a part of life. It's not just a part of life that must be endured, but it is an opportunity for growth. Okay? When things break down with anything that we're building, whatever bridge that we're building, and we experience maybe the whole bridge gets destroyed, like in World War II with the chain bridge in Budapest, we have the opportunity to rebuild even stronger. We know that destruction, that pain, that devastation, disappointment, this is all a part of life, of being human. We are never going to avoid that. We are never going to escape it. So we can check our resiliency. We can teach our kids resilience so that they know how to overcome rather than try and protect them from everything. We can build a strong immune system so that we're strong in the face of whatever comes our way. And also deepen our faith and strengthen our faith so that fear doesn't run the show. So that we're not looking to everybody else to tell us who we are, what we're possible of, what we're capable of, like what is possible in the world. We don't look to another human for that. But we reach deep in our hearts. We connect with that divine source of everything and have the ability but that takes leadership, doesn't it? And it takes accountability. It doesn't allow our minds just to be hijacked by the media or social media or a fear of how we're being perceived. It really takes leadership. It takes courage, because once we understand how the human mind works, and once we understand that we have so much say in the matter of how we are receiving life, then we really can't underestimate our power to create our reality. Not like living in our own woo-woo reality. I mean creating concrete results and manifestations for ourselves and our relationships. And that comes from deep acceptance. That's rule number one, right? Deep acceptance. When things are not as what we wished or hoped for in our partner, in ourselves, in our world around us, and our goals. We must accept first. This is embracing. This is not resigning. This is accepting. Surrender the resistance that we have to it. And then problem solve like crazy. Like go to the drawing board. Constructing that bridge takes an immense amount of time. How are we going to do that and be responsible for it? We do have to, figure out how much of the bridge we can actually create when it involves somebody else. But what's amazing is that the person standing on that other shoreline is not just a human, but is a soul. And all of our souls want that deep Connection. It's just our minds and our egos that get in the way of that. So guys, have courage. Take the reins of that leadership. We've all been giving power away to our minds and allowing others to hijack our minds, to brainwash us. So how can we take it back? How can we take that power back and determine how we experience life? Because peace, happiness, creation, intimacy, these are all choices. These are not things that just happen. These are choices, just like those bridges that take immense amount of time to prep, to build, and then to keep reinforcing when we're noticing cracks, when we're noticing weaknesses. We need to keep going back and reinforcing them. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining me so much. So much love to you all. I really hope that you are able to start building those own bridges in your life through accepting accountability. So I love you all. Until next time, keep raising the vibration. Okay, bye.